Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. We're really glad you're here. Today's episode is sponsored by Habitly. It's interesting. In the episode, I'm going to talk with Damien about software developers. One of the issues there is soft skills. We don't go too deep, but Habitly helps people develop the habits of highly successful people. Habits are soft skills, and how we interact with one another, how we get along with one another. Habitly is a super easy site to use. It's great for individuals and teams to develop your skills in setting and achieving goals, communicating with others, running meetings, avoiding controversy or conflict or resolving it, etc. Check it out, habitly.com. It's a great solution and dirt cheap, quite frankly. But today's episode is with Damien Filiatrault, and now he is the founder and CEO at Scalable Path. They have 23,000 software developers on their site looking for work, and they actually help you find and hire people to work on your software development team. They've done this with 500 developers so far. He's been at it for 12 years, and he really understands the development space. Those of you who don't know, I've done software development since, how long have I done software development? Since 2000 at least. Okay, so for over 20 years. I'm not saying I'm the best at it, but we have a really good conversation if you've ever thought about developing some software or just working with people remotely. Damien's got some great tips. Let's dive in. Damien, really glad to have you on the show. You work with software developers and trying to help people find these developers when they need them. That's got to bring up a lot of situations where you're dealing with different employee situations and how to find these people, how to vet them, and then what happens when it goes wrong, which I'm sure is rare because you've vetted them, but it does come up. I know that. If we wanted to start with what's like a knock across the forehead, one of the biggest lessons you've learned, what would that be?
Well, there's a lot in that question. One thing I've learned recently is that remote is going nowhere. I should put it that way. It's not going away. A lot of companies are trying to get people to come back into the office, and they may have some success in some industries, but people just like it too darn much. And there's so many compelling reasons to do it that it's here to stay for the long term. As far as, lessons learned, well, if you're dealing with a human, anything can happen, right? Our vetting process can really increase your odds of having a successful engagement with the human. In our case, it's a software developer, but people are still people, and they have mental health issues. They have actual health issues. They are jerks. So we try to do a really good job at figuring out, hey, are they good mobile developers? Are they good web developers? Okay, yes, we know that. In talking to them, do they seem like they've got a good attitude? Are they good communicators? Yeah. So you get through, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and effort trying to get through to the best candidates. But every once in a while, yeah, you're right, it doesn't work. And I think when you're dealing with humans, it can never be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the remote work type of thing, and you say it's here to stay. I was actually talking with somebody about that earlier today. My conclusion is that the hybrid, I think, is really an ideal environment if the person's close enough, because having that 2 to 3 days in the office where there's interaction, there's, you have to prep a little bit more than you would have to remote to meet with people, in person, I think can be can be really, really positive. But then the other thing is kind of underlying what you were saying. Like a lot of people, I'm in California, so a lot of people move from Silicon Valley to like Tahoe or Montana or Idaho. They never want to come back, and there's no commute just down the road to get back into Apple's offices or whatever it is.
No, I mean, I'm in Northern California as well. And, the hybrid thing, I think you got to always take these things on a case by case basis, and every company is different and every individual person and job description is different. So yeah, if your job somehow is better done in an in-person, some jobs you have to be in person. Like you're manufacturing cars, you're going in there. If you really need to brainstorm or get whiteboard with people, and that's really part of your process. I mean, I don't even know. I think that can actually be done very well virtually. I mean, my company is 100% remote. There is nothing but remote. So, and I don't feel we are held back by that. But yeah, I mean, I tried to go, I feel that the downside of sometimes of not having that, social aspect at the office. Like I tried to go to a co-working space 10 minutes away from my house and figured, I'll meet people there and I'll go out to lunch with them and it'll be cool. It'll be kind of like back in the days when I went into an office, but I got in there and everyone's just heads down in their computer all the time anyway. And I ended up just commuting there and then going out and getting a burrito by myself and then coming home. So it was what am I even doing? So I don't know. For us, we fully remote totally works. I don't know for some other companies, maybe that hybrid part is.
Well, what is it? It's the company that owns WordPress. What are they? I forget the name of them, but they've got like 3,000 employees and they are 100% remote. And then what they do is teams can get together at a location, I think once a quarter. And then once a year, they bring the whole company to some resort where they do like a national team meeting type thing, where they update things on the company and they share notes or whatever. But that's the way they connect. And they've been able to make it work with 3,000 people for, I don't know, very long time. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, the all remote can be very productive, very effective.
Yeah. Automatic. That's right. The company.
That's right.
We've discussed that too. And, we're kind of going off topic here, but, we made a decision that we weren't going to fly everybody around the globe to get together because of, not even primarily the cost, but I can say that there is a cost to it. But it's like, if we're all doing our jobs effectively, do we really need to hop on planes and like burn a bunch of jet fuel? Like it's not actually good for the planet, it's kind of a luxury that I think if we're going to have our carbon footprint as individuals, and I would personally, if I want to reduce the number of flights that I'm doing in a year, I'd rather take that flight with my family and go on a vacation with them than use up my kind of carbon footprint on like going and meeting my coworkers and somewhere. Right. So yeah, I mean, we're pretty into fighting climate change. We actually donate 10% of our profits to an organization called, the Climate Fund. And that's a whole other topic. But we decided not to do in-person, like even annual meetings because we feel like, hey, we get to know each other. We're on Zoom, we're connecting. We don't need to like do that to the planet.
And I want to encourage the audience that if you relate to what Damien's saying, you're like, yeah, I totally agree. We got to care about the environment. For me, I use a different term. I just would like us to be better stewards of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's super important, and we're not focusing on it enough. Totally agree with you. So I think what you're saying makes sense, unless there's really something you need to communicate and interact with, and there's a value to getting together. That just hoopla, let's get together, let's drink, let's have some conversations that we basically could do online or trainings. Totally, totally agree with you. Another thing that they do, if I'm remembering correctly, is they give every employee, I think it's like $2,000 or $3,000 to outfit their home office.
Yeah.
So it's really got everything they want, multiple monitors, whatever. Of course, you're in your Sprinter van, for camping right now. So for not everybody's watching on video, but I think Sprinter vans are totally cool. That's my dream. When I grow up, I want to get a Sprinter van that I can just take off with my wife and kids that want to join us and go somewhere out in nature. So I'm with you. I love it. But this thing where you can help people have such a great environment at home in their workspace is another big positive with the remote thing, and I think companies don't think you're going to move to remote and then don't give people the tools. I mean, even a comfortable chair makes such a big difference, and that can be expensive to get something that's going to support you all day. But in the office, it's there. We just take it for granted at home. You've got something.
You got to have a great, productive, comfortable work setup at home.
Yeah. And I'm standing at my desk because I've got the desk that goes up and down because that forces me to stretch a little bit. And, but I agree with you. And then, a question I have, how many software developers do you, and the other thing is you've got your core team, but then you have these contractors basically, right? The developers. Yeah. How many developers do you represent and where are they located?
Well, there are about 25,000 who have created profiles in our platform. Of those, we have worked with about, I think the number is about 500 of them. Okay. And place them with about 300 different clients. And our real focus is, we provide software development services to US-based clients primarily. And because of that, Latin America has really kind of been our bread and butter. It's just worked so well from a time zone perspective, cultural perspective. And, it's still more affordable. It's not quite as affordable as some other geographies like in Asia. But that said, we do have some clients in Europe and developers in Europe and developers. There's a lot of developers who have signed up from other countries like India and Pakistan. But some of them reach out and they say well, why haven't I gotten a position through you guys yet? And it's because a lot of the clients that are coming to us want people in their time zone. And even though they might be a skills fit, they get matched with someone in Latin America because we kind of believe in that philosophy as well, is that things can work better in your time zone.
Yeah, I've worked with development teams in Russia and then here in the US. I don't think I've gone outside of Russia, although I've done several Russian teams. But it's interesting to me to hear you say Latin America or South America because I don't think about that for me when I think of software programmers. So which countries there are strong with their schooling and with their work experience where these people are really high caliber?
Well, Brazil is our number one. Argentina, Colombia, Mexico. Those would be probably our top 4. Those countries have done well with, educating people in technical degrees and English fluency. And I think, I know that your podcast is sponsored by Habitly, and one of the things that makes them a compelling service is that you're helping people with their soft skills, right? And when you think about a developer, you think about, okay, I need to know someone who's really good technically, right? And that's true. Don't get me wrong. You want someone who has the skills, but it's not everything. And so, those soft skills are super important, and, cultural fit is important too. And those are some of the things that actually are great qualities that you find, as far as having someone in the US enjoying and relating to and having a good culture with people from Latin America. We come from like sort of this Western European culture. There's a lot of what we call cultural affinity there, so not only do people in Latin America tend to have, there's a very large population, right? So there's some people that have strong technical skills, but culturally tend to be easy to get along with, not afraid to, raise issues if there are issues. You get some countries around the world, there's a little bit of more of a hesitance to, rock the boat. If someone who's considered senior to you, you might say, well, yeah, everything's okay. Everything's fine. And sometimes you need someone to just feel like, hey, I don't care if you're, my boss. I'm going to tell you, hey, something's wrong. We got to deal with it. And there's really less of those issues, I think, in countries that come from the
like Asia and India. I remember I heard a story about a guy, and it was a Microsoft call. So there was Microsoft's huge, but Microsoft US, there was a guy who called a team in Japan, I believe it was. And they had a meeting about a very important topic. And he had an associate with him, which the other team knew. But what the other team in Japan did not know was that the associate spoke Japanese. So they were having this meeting, and there would be times when the team in Japan was talking amongst themselves in Japanese. And, the American was speaking English, blah, blah, blah. So they do the whole call, and the Japanese say, yeah, everything's fine. And they hang up. And then the American English speaking turns to the other guy and says, well, what were they saying? How do we do? Because it sounds like this is all good. He goes, they're not going to do it. They're not going to work with you. Because all the Japanese conversation was, no way, don't like this. This is not going to work. But what they were saying was, yes, you'll hear from us. This is great. So I understand that fully. That's an important part. And as my audience knows, that, I've got a young guy working for me now as a virtual assistant in Bogota, Colombia. And he's fabulous, as you talk about that culture fit. He wants to make things happen. He shares his views, but he's not pushy, but he's not afraid to share them. And we love having him on the team. So one question, let me ask you, because I've been involved in software development. And this is for the audience that's listening that already does some software development, and you want to add people, you're going to know this question. But for those that are new, as you continue to add people, what I find is that even if you've got two developers that program in the same language and they have, at least both good experience, maybe not identical years of experience, but I find that programmers seem to always have some nuances about themselves where they program slightly differently, or if not vastly differently, using the same tools. Do you find that? And how do you vet for that? And how do you find the matches for how people do that when you're adding to a team?
Well, there's always going to be some of that. And the one thing you always hate when you're a client, like if you're trying to find someone to take over your software project, is when some developer comes in and says, oh, this is all terrible. I got to rewrite the whole thing, right? Sometimes it may be true, but, you hear that probably more than you should. Some developers are just much prefer writing something themselves and writing something from scratch than dealing with someone else's code that they might not understand already, and they have to go and figure out. But how you deal with that? One thing that really helps is frameworks, like, for example, if you're in the PHP world, if you use a solid web application framework, like Laravel, for example, is a very popular framework. The framework will make a bunch of decisions for you, or for the developers. It's like, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you do routing. This is how you do interactions with the database. This is how you do templating. This is how you do the back-end logic. And so there's a bunch of conventions and there's documentation. And so the big stuff is already sort of decided for you, and people can't really clash over the big stuff. Once you get into like, okay, writing some application logic within a controller, yeah, there still may be some style differences. And then, but then you have other cool tools now, like, as soon as people commit their code, there's like I think it's called like Prettify or Prettier or something. Like there's programs that will then, let's say that one guy likes to use tabs to indent his code and another guy likes to use spaces. You set the rules as the person who sets up the project, and it will automatically make everybody's code follow the same conventions. So there's a lot you can do. I don't think it's a huge problem, but maybe those are things that you get to use on bigger projects with bigger teams and more serious projects. Maybe if you're more of a small business and you've got a smaller website and you haven't had the chance to put in those practices or use a mature framework like Laravel, then having you could be more susceptible to that problem.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So it seems like, I recommend that, as far as in the US, there's two mandatory things you have to do when you hire. One, you got to do a background check that includes a civil court check. Because if they're suing past employers or their neighbor or vice versa, you need to know that, even if legally you can't make a decision on hiring. But the other important thing, the number one thing, is you have to do a test drive. So it sounds like what you've got in your structure is that you can do a verbal test drive of confirming like what the framework is they're using, how they describe, how they do certain things. But I also know the other side of it where you're looking at actual work. I know some developers that I've worked with, they'll say, well, send me some code that you wrote, because they want to see how the code was written. Mm-hmm. So they can see that, or they'll hire the person for a day-long project or a week-long project so they can see how the person works or codes. Do you find that either you're doing some of those test drives or that your clients are doing some of those before they just say, okay, this person looks good, let's run with him or her?
Yeah, that's really why people come to us. I mean, you pay a little bit of a premium on the hourly rate because we're doing that stuff for you. We're finding and vetting the people. And so our process is we'll spend 30 minutes just doing the soft stuff. That's okay. How are they at communicating in English? What's their personality like? What are they doing currently? Like, are they trying to work their full-time job and then also take this on? There's a lot of that in this new remote world. And that's one of the big pitfalls is like people are just trying to game it a little bit. But, is this person biting off more than they can chew? Just taking their experience at face value, not trying to really test their skills. That's what we do in the first interview. Do they look good on paper? Do we like how they communicate, et cetera? Yeah. And then if they make it past that step, they'll do an hour-long live coding exercise with one of our technical interviewers. And we record that. So we'll say, we'll customize this exercise to the needs of the client. So if your project is a WordPress project, or your project might be a Laravel project, and what are you using on the front end? Are you using React? Okay, we're going to make them code for an hour. They don't get prepped on what the exact exercise is going to be. They have to just have their environment ready, and they have to build a backend API in Laravel and interact with a MySQL database, and then send data to the React application, and then format it using CSS. And we record the whole thing. If we think they pass, we synthesize our notes from both interviews and we present them to the client. The client can review the people that have been presented, and they can request interviews. We coordinate the interviews, and then, what people normally do is just sort of assume like, yeah, I know what their technical skills are. I know they can code at this point. Maybe they'll dive into some deeper technical topics. But some clients say like, yeah, actually, I want you to do a take-home exercise now. We don't want to get them like to have like interview fatigue. If you make them go through 3 more interviews and a coding exercise, after 5-6 interviews, they might just be like, you know what, I'm out. So you got to be, because people are getting other offers. You kind of gotta, if you find someone good, it's like you find a good house in California, you got to jump on it because someone else is going to make an offer.
Well, you can take a little more time now, but 3 months ago and for the last 2 years, you better move fast.
Yeah.
No, I love what you're saying. And, this is, as we grow the development team on Habitly, I have to say, I never considered this type of approach because we've thought more, we have a couple contractors and then maybe we'll add somebody internally. But we've had such success with the young man in Bogota that coming to you and entertaining, what it would look like if we added a full-time member to our team that was vetted by you. I really want to emphasize to the audience, don't underestimate the vetting that Damien's bringing up. This stuff that they're doing is so important and so helpful to you. Damien, when I talk to people about hiring, I tell them, I ask them, what's the most important thing? What's your number one objective when you're hiring? What do you think I'm looking for as an answer?
Well, I would say there's a few things. You don't want to spend so much of your own company's time that you're taking your energy away from running your own business and causing a huge distraction.
Actually, wait a minute. I'm going to stop you there because you did something that rarely happens. You answered my answer.
Okay.
The number one objective is protect your time.
Okay.
So if you have to structure the vetting process so that at any point you're going to identify if there's a red flag and you're going to politely and respectfully end the interview and not spend any more time with the candidate. And what you're doing with your organization is you're saving the company that upfront time to bring somebody to a certain level where you're like, hey, this person should be a really good match. Culturally, you've got a feel for them. Soft skills, you've got a feel for them. Really important. And then, of course, the technical side. And so I think that's awesome what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
Mike, congrats.
Yeah. And we don't just, have you pick someone and then say, okay, thanks, bye. Some clients, they've got, everything figured out. They've got, a CTO and they have an onboarding process and they have, following Scrum or Kanban and they've got it figured out. But other clients that are kind of new to it, we can definitely help with that onboarding process and, help you get set up for success as a growing company. And then, if anything goes wrong, you've got, it's sort of like, and a little bit of you have us as a little bit of like your own recruiting department, right? Your own HR department where like for your dev team, right? So if you say, you know what, we also have a trial period where, if you're not happy within a week, you just pay 50% of their rate and then you can stop immediately. And if something goes sideways, you've got a team that's got the job description that we worked on together. We probably had another pipeline of people that maybe didn't get selected that we can reactivate. We can, see if we can get someone in who's a better fit. And it's not like you've got to spin that whole process up yourself and like take people on your team that should be writing code into doing a bunch of interviews for you. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's awesome. So what are the challenges that you're having as far as growing your business? Where's the biggest bottleneck or hurdle that you've got? Because it sounds like, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this 12 years. Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit of a pivot around 4 years to be more of a staff augmentation company, more of a, platform where people could create profiles and we could search by skills. That didn't happen at the beginning. We were more of just like a dev shop at the beginning.
Yeah.
No, I think it's the challenge in this space is probably the same challenge for a lot of companies. And one of the reasons I'm out on a podcast right now is just getting people aware of us, getting people to check us out when they're looking for developers, and to give us a shot to see what kind of candidates we can put in front of them.
Yeah, and I think it's really great that you stay involved. So I think that's great, because if something does go sideways, you're there to help transition the process. I know some people who have gone over to overseas for like IT help desk people, type of thing, a little different. Mm-hmm. But the ones that have been successful, for the most part, not some people can have success flying solo, but they've worked through a party. Like I've got a company that grew from 35 people to 70 people, and almost all the additional people were in the Philippines. But mm-hmm. they worked through a company in the Philippines that helped them vet people and is there to help if there's any difficulty, although they're not involved like day-to-day management type
exactly
thing.
Like us. Yeah.
It's a huge, huge help. And by the way, before I had this superstar in Bogota, we had another person who came in as a virtual assistant, and she did really well for a while. And then we had some issues, and it didn't work out. And they were there to assist with the transition really quickly. And it was painless pretty much. And it was too bad, but it's the way it went. And it would have been much more difficult if we did not have that support to do that. So, I'm more interested in talking to you about my stuff, which is not appropriate for the podcast. But so where can people learn more about what you're doing, Damien? Because it sounds like something that certain members of our audience should really check out and learn more.
They should just come to scalablepath.com. Whether you're a software developer, designer, project manager, data scientist, type of a technical knowledge worker looking to see what's out there on the job market, or if you're a company looking to hire that sort of person, just come to our website and there'll be a button for you to click on that's for you, and just tell us what you're looking for, and we'll do our best to find it for you.
Fabulous. Well, I thank you so much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure the audience has gained from it too.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. If you like the episode, I'd love to hear from you. Give us some feedback, a comment, a rating. That would be great. Don't forget our sponsor, Habitly.com, where you can learn great soft skills that help you be your best. And finally, stay tuned. We have more great guests coming. I love talking with these people. They've got great insights. It's really fun. It's great to learn. And you learn these little tips you can apply. Well, the next guest has another one for you. Don't miss it.